Hey everyone, and welcome to the Hazy Sports Podcast. We're back after a couple weeks, a little time off for the wedding, but we've got tons to cover here. We've got final thoughts on a great NHL season, NHL draft coverage, some big free agency moves, and we've got a couple NHL legends retiring that we want to touch on. But first, Charlie, haven't seen you in a couple weeks since the wedding. How's it been? What a party that was, and how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. July 5th, everywhere across America, people are waking up with blown off fingers from fireworks last night. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. Now that you're married, how are you feeling? You feel any different?
Yeah, I feel great. You know what? It was, I don't feel that much different other than we don't have the wedding planning as a focal point, which was fun, a fun part of the process, but it got pretty intense the last couple months just with a lot of different details going. When the wedding finished, it was just like this euphoria of this awesome weekend, created so many great memories with so many people. It took the whole week after we went to a cabin just to kind of unwind after. And it took the whole week almost to kind of process everything that happened. So many people you talk to, so many different things you remember happening that you kind of almost forgot about because there was just so much coming at you. But it was this cool combination of basking in the afterglow of that kind of great weekend, and then also instantly not having a wedding to plan anymore. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Lots of fun, and kind of felt good then to just have nothing to do for a week and just relax and chill.
I had an absolute blast. I feel like sometimes the drinking gods kind of shine on you. And when I woke up Sunday, somehow I didn't feel bad at all. And I was like, all right, that was my one for the year. Because I'm not kidding. After the speeches and everything, I bet you I had about 19 gin and sodas. It was, obviously not stressful for me. But once the speaking part was done, I was like, okay, now we can kind of get into it. And I was expecting to have one of the worst hangovers, with the combination of sweating for 2 straight days and then just rehydrating with nothing but alcohol. But surprisingly, felt pretty good.
Yeah, same here. I didn't feel too bad either, and I know what you mean. There was I didn't have to do a full speech. Got up on the microphone at the end there with Sarah and I just to kind of thank everyone and get things rolling. But then we had the last thing for us was getting the golden hour photos. I feel like I got my photo taken like 3,000 times that day with every possible combination of people that were there, but we were already getting some good ones to look at, so that's great. But there was this point where we're going to all these different places at golden hour, and I can hear the music starting to pump in the barn, and you can hear the party get going, and I'm just like itching to get back. So when we finally wrapped up those photos and got back to the barn, yeah, the drinks were flowing. I was cracking those Modelo's were just sliding right down. That seemed to be the most popular beer that we had.
Yeah, that was my first time having one of those. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna actually buy some of those. I learned a lot of new terminology with your wedding too. I'd never heard of the first look before, which was a big talking point at the guy's cabin, and then this golden hour too. I'd never heard of that either, but I'm looking forward to seeing some more of the pictures. The ones that I'm seeing are pretty awesome.
Yeah, we've got a few sneak peek ones that we've got, and they are awesome. Here's another word for you that I learned through the process: tablescapes. So it refers to the whole table setting. So I had a lot of tablescape discussions as well. So
what was the other one too, where they did the picture of all your stuff laid out? That was another.
Oh, the flat lay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a design thing. But yeah, that was a new one as well. I feel like the next time somebody gets married, I'm really going to be able to, I could get right in there with the bride and be dropping all the proper terms and some of the things that I've learned. But yeah, my hangover wasn't too bad either. I think because there's just so many people I was talking to and connecting with that almost slows the process down a little bit. But once the dancing got going, yeah, the drinks were flowing pretty good. But Yeah, great party. I'll admit, when the final shuttle bus drove off the property, I'm kind of high-fiving people out the window, and then I see it drive away, and it was sort of like this. Wow, it's over now. It was almost a little bit of an emotional feeling where you're just riding on such a high for a couple days, and then it kind of like comes to an end so quickly. But it didn't take long after that where all the adrenaline that had been pumping through me for the day
Drop.
started to drop, and I was like, wow, I am friggin' tired right now. But no, it was a great time, and yeah, looking forward to now connecting with everybody. It's been cool talking to different people because I have sort of my perspective of the night being sort of in the focal point, but it's been cool talking to other people and hearing different things that happened to them throughout the night, or different stories from different people. So it'll be cool kind of connecting with everybody over the coming months to hear some of those stories.
It was funny. We got up Sunday at the hotel and I had packed stuff to wear Sunday, but I forgot to pack extra shoes. So I'm walking out of the hotel in like a pair of gym shorts, a t-shirt, and then dress shoes. It was a good look walking
Oh,
through the lobby.
nice. Well, yeah, no, I'm glad you had a good time. We definitely did too. But excited to be back on the podcast here. It's been a few weeks. We haven't talked since the end of, I think it was after Game 5 or right before Game 5 when we did our last live cast. So
Yeah.
tons have happened. Obviously, Panthers go on to win back-to-back cups. We won't talk too much about that. I think the analysis has kind of been done to death on that one. Panthers just the better team all around, and not much more I think you can say to that.
No.
Um,
It went
but
from being, is this the greatest final ever, to super anticlimactic, right? Even the games that Edmonton won, I mean, obviously I was cheering for Edmonton, but I don't think it was even close. Like the game 5 was an absolute beatdown, and then game 6 was just more of the same. I don't know how, like you talk about coaches always making adjustments and stuff, but it was the same thing every game and they just couldn't figure it out. And that's the most frustrating part.
yeah, you said it all there, and hard to say much more than that. We won't talk too much about the finals, but before we move on to some of the draft stuff and free agency, I was thinking we started this podcast right before Four Nations. Obviously, there was some amazing games and that epic matchup between Canada and USA. It really got things going. But then after Four Nations finished, we had this great run to the playoffs with some great races, good action to kind of finish off the regular season. We got Ovi's kind of goal to break Gretzky's record, and then we get into the playoffs. And just looking at that playoff run was pretty magical. Some special moments along the way. You think back to some of those round one things, they almost seem like a lifetime ago after, those playoffs go on for so long. But
Yeah.
when you take a step back and look at the playoffs as a whole, is there any moments or favorite memories that kind of stand out for you?
Yeah, like we couldn't have picked a better time to start this. I feel like this was kind of a peak of this generation now. Like, you had the Crosby Ovechkin stuff, and that was a big step for hockey. But I think this year it really kind of took off with the Four Nations and then the playoffs being so good. The two things that I wrote down for this, I think the Leafs losing in that game 7 was like a real watershed moment. I mean, they've had lots of collapses before, but what ultimately happened to that Leaf team, now it's no longer together, and the fans, just the outrage, it also kind of reached a peak. So that was one big one for me. The Pete DeBoer collapse, all you heard about was this guy's, made so many conference finals, he's undefeated in game 7s and all this stuff. And just to see him completely unhinged and ultimately get fired and throw his goalie under the bus. And those were two big ones for me. What did you have for the playoffs?
Well, a few that jumped out to me was that actually game 1 with Edmonton and LA. LA goes up 4-0. Edmonton storms back. Huge goal from McDavid with like a minute and 28 seconds left. to tie it up 5-5. And you think Edmonton's like swinging back, and then Deneau scores to put the dagger in the heart of the Oilers. But that one stood out to me because that was game one, so we were like three days into the NHL playoffs, and I thought, holy shit, like what a way to kick it off. I guess one of the other special moments to me, I'll combine two things into one, but it was that one weekend where we had game 7 with the Stars and Avalanche on the Saturday night, and then we had Jets Blues on the Sunday night, and of course we have the Rantanen hat trick in the third to come back and beat the Avs. And then on the Sunday night, we get Winnipeg scoring with, what was it, 2 seconds left or something like that to put it into overtime and then go on to win. Those 2 games may have been the best 2 games sort of a hockey weekend I can ever remember.
Yeah, I obviously watched both, and I remember thinking how crazy the first one was, and I'm like, well, there's no way this this can be better. And then to follow it up the next day with an even more, nick finish. Those are two great ones for sure.
One more I'll throw for honorable mention was Game 3, Montreal, Washington. First playoff game at the Bell Center since 2017. The crowd was just electric. We had seen them at the Four Nations, and I guess my experience seeing the Bell Center at Four Nations is kind of endeared me to that Bell Center crowd a little bit more, but the place was just going nuts. Montreal gets the win. We had that bench fight between Wilson and Anderson. Like, it was just the intensity. It wasn't like, in terms of the big picture, it wasn't really that important of a game in the overall playoffs, but in terms of just pure entertainment and being glued to my TV, I can't think of too many games throughout the playoffs that got me better than that one.
No, and now all you can think about is the future for that Montreal team, right? Like, that's a taste, and that's a good experience for these guys that haven't had any of that experience yet, and it was crazy. Speaking of Montreal, at your wedding there, talking to Evan, and he was mentioning that we should get up to Montreal for a game, so maybe we got a potential road trip there. Obviously, regular season, you won't get the same intensity, but I've never been to a Montreal game, so maybe that's something on the
Yeah, that would be great. That
burner.
would be, it's obviously one of the probably bucket list places of places to see a NHL game. So that would be pretty awesome. But yeah, so just kind of putting a bow on the regular season. It's been a hell of a ride from Four Nations right through to that regular season playoff run, all through the playoffs. All those things we talked about, those were only round ones. Like that was a crazy round one. It felt like there was so much drama, and then as things get narrowed down, it's intense, exciting hockey. But when you got 8 different series going on all at once, and all the different storylines, that's probably my favorite point of the playoffs, actually. But you talk about Montreal, that's probably a good segue into the NHL draft. So it was the Friday after the wedding, so I was still at the cabin, so I wasn't watching it live. Still in sort of our mini moon experience, and the draft watching.
You're telling me you guys weren't, what a romantic setting, a cabin in the woods watching a NHL draft. You didn't have that going? I thought that would have set the mood perfectly.
Yeah, I was a tough sell. I didn't even try to sell that one. I knew that would be a no-go. But I was kind of following along sort of on my phone just to kind of see how things were unfolding compared to the mock drafts. But I'm curious to get your take. You had a chance to watch it live, and especially this was the first year they did sort of the decentralized draft. From the videos and stuff I saw, it looked pretty awkward to me, but how was it kind of watching it live?
Awkward is the perfect word. Like, you'd have a pick, and then there'd just sort of be dead air. Well, not dead air, but then you got, I don't know, fucking 18 people analyzing the pick. And it just seemed like they didn't really know what to expect or what was going to happen next. And for me, we're used to seeing the kids get up and, they hug their family, walk up on the stage, put the jersey on. And although there was some cool moments in this, I think it kind of sucks to take that away from these kids. Like, this is the biggest moment of their life right up to this point, and you're gonna make them do these weird online Zoom call kind of things. I think they kind of missed the point here. Not to mention, it took forever. Like, I thought this would streamline it a little bit, but it seemed to just drag and drag and drag.
Yeah, you were saying it was like 4 hours or something for the
I think
first
the
round.
first round took 4.5 hours.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't I'm glad I had a good excuse to not watch that. You can just kind of get, it's one of those things you don't need to hear like 10 people breaking down every pick, and you can kind of just get the download the next day and pretty much get up to speed. It's not,
Yeah.
there's really not much there from a television entertainment perspective.
Now I know you have it written down here, and I did like the sort of viral stuff they did, like with the Brady Martin. That stuff is pretty cool. And I'm surprised more teams didn't do something like that. And maybe if they do this again, there'll be more kind of cool things like that. But like, why is Ralph Macchio making picks for like, it seems so weird when if you had all this time to prepare and they had the most random people making picks for teams. Like, is the
Yeah.
Karate Kid a big fucking Islanders fan? I don't know. I guess he is.
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like he hasn't been really relevant in the mainstream for 20 some years. So let's talk about the picks, though. Maybe a few stumbles in terms of the decentralized format. Whether they continue to do that or not, we'll see. I'm sure they'll iron out a few things. But looking at the actual picks, where do you want to start? Anything jumping out at you in terms of winners,
Well,
losers, or intriguing guys you want to follow?
so we kind of poked fun at the Islanders leading up to this draft, but between, taking Matthew Schaefer and then making the trade to get the other two first round picks. So they picked Victor Eklund, who's, I think he was North America or whatever the Central Scouting rated, like, I think he was 11th or something. So to get him at 15. And then they took this Keyshawn Aitchison from Barrie, who's just a hitting machine and a super skilled defenseman too. And then they've already got Cal Ritchie from the Brock Nelson trade. Like, I think the Islanders, you went from being kind of a middle of the road team to like, you've just totally transformed your future in one weekend, basically. So I thought they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I agree. And part of that deal, they got the two picks from Montreal for Dobson. And
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a win-win for both teams because obviously Montreal's already got that young nucleus of talent. They don't
Yeah.
really need a lot more youth or drafts in the pipeline. So getting a first pairing D-man, to swap out for those two picks, because you got to think, if you're making those picks, your best case scenario is that one of them comes close to being as good as Dobson
Yep.
is now at that stage in the draft. So to basically swap those into a bona fide D-man seemed like a pretty smart move to go along with the young nucleus that they have coming up.
Absolutely. And then Montreal also adds Zach Balduke from St. Louis, who's, not a huge name, but that's another guy who's gonna slot in there. And then they drafted another kid, LJ Mooney, who's another undersized, kind of Theo Fleury kind of guy who's just likes to stir it up, but has like some offensive upside. But going back to the Islanders too, like they got all these young guys coming in. And there's a scenario here where they could trade a Sorokin or Barzell, and you could totally transform this team in the next 2 years just based on, they're probably not going to win next year. So why not keep going with this? I thought they did an awesome job. Like, you look at teams at like Buffalo who have been in this position for the last like 6 years and they can't seem to get it right. And it looks like the Islanders got it right first shot and should be decent in the next couple of years.
Yeah, they got a little luck in the draft, obviously moving
For
up, but
sure, for
then
sure.
and then but they've carried that momentum in, and now it'll be. I think hockey's always interesting, and both teams in New York are good. And the Rangers are another team they picked up. Gavrikov, I won't jump into the free agency stuff too much, but just with new coach with Sullivan in there for New York for the Rangers and the Islanders getting good. It would be cool to see a good New York rivalry back again.
Yeah, for sure. Another guy that the Islanders took a chance on is this Maxim Shabanov. I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff. And obviously you can make a fucking YouTube clip about anybody with these moves, but this kid, if you get a chance, look up some of the stuff that he's pulling off because it's kind of Demidov like. He's a little smaller, but like you can just see the offensive creativity, and it's a no risk, right? It's 1 year. But this kid looks like he's electric.
I think I did actually, just now that you're describing it, I wasn't sure of the name, but I think I did see him. Is he playing like the Finnish league or in the
He was,
KHL or something?
yeah, he was KHLing it last year, but like he's just undressing defensemen and like stuff that I've never seen a guy even try. Like splitting defense with like a 360 and putting it between their legs. It's a low risk, high reward kind of move. And if he does make the team, you might see some flashes of brilliance.
So, I mean, obviously, Schaefer, I'm interested to follow his career, but as the number one pick, there's a little less intrigue there. I think for me, the most intriguing guys are sort of the boom or bust guys, the guys that maybe fell a little bit due to injury risks or they just had a bad year, but the potential's there to be a real superstar. Any guys like that for you that you're kind of like off the outside of sort of the top five guys or whatever that jump out at you that you're kind of interested in following along with their progress?
I got a good one for you, and I think it was kind of the steal of the draft. The Capitals got Lyndon Lakovich at 27. He was rated, I believe, 13th by North American Scouting. 6'4", 200 pounds, so he's already got the big body. And he's apparently a burner. I haven't seen much of him play. I was just reading about it, but people were saying like this could be the steal of the draft. 27 goals and 31 assists in just 47 games last year. And to get a guy that's already that big, and still has the speed, like the Capitals have a pretty good, intriguing prospect pool coming up. And I guess this is Ovechkin's last year, right? That's what they've said coming up. But
Yeah.
the future is pretty bright for them. What about you? Who do you got? Who are you
Well,
looking forward to?
yeah, I didn't go quite as deep in there off the board, but for me, Roger McQueen is just a guy that's intriguing. The Ducks get him, I think, at the 10 spot there, but a 6'5" guy with elite skating. And just he had he's been troubled with back injuries, and I think that's the only reason he kind of went that low. But when you just see a guy with that, that kind of size and skill, you're always kind of hoping that he stays away from the injuries, and you can see that full potential. But those are guys where you could look back on this draft 5-10 years down the road and think, how the hell did he drop all the way to 10?
I saw a good clip of him and Beckett Seneca, who Anaheim took last year, I believe third overall or second. Anyways, and they were kind of battling back and forth, and they're both too big. I believe Seneca's like 6'3", 6'4", and just fast as hell. Like the talent coming out of these leagues now is just insane.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's a good one.
It's fun to watch. Another guy for me, and he was drafted a little higher, but I feel like has that boomer bust potential is Porter Martone.
Yeah, I have him written down too.
Kind of feels like on the high end could be almost like a Kachuk type player, but you just never know. I don't know if he has sort of that elite skating and that will translate to the NHL, but there's just something about him. There's a bit of a swagger and confidence and that sort of size and physical play where you could just sort of see if he gets it right. And he's a Flyers. He got taken by the Flyers, so an organization that kind of embraces that style of play. He could be a fan favorite there pretty quick.
And it's another guy who's already got the NHL body, right? Like he's already a big dude and he's only going to get better. Yeah, I had that one written down too. I thought he'd be a perfect fit there because they have all kinds of flash and skill. So you just park that guy in front of the net. But
the hard thing with all of this is you have to like check yourself a little bit when you start getting excited for the NHL draft. Like, for example, like the Wings took Carter Bear and they get him at, I think, the 14th pick. A guy that, put up some pretty good numbers in the WHL, plays a physical game. When you looking at his highlights and his profile. You start to get yourself a little excited, and then you're like, well, he'll probably play another year in the WHL and then play in Grand Rapids for a
Yeah.
year. So you kind of get excited with these draft picks, especially for guys on the team you're cheering for. But ultimately, you're waiting, waiting 4 years before they're actually doing anything meaningful for your team.
Yeah, hockey is kind of weird. Like you obviously have your guys that'll slot right in, but a lot of these guys may, like you said, may not even be in the league next year.
That takes me to one question that I wanted to get your opinion on, and it's around drafting goalies. And it seems to be like a really tricky thing. I get it. That's sort of a unique position, but just after seeing kind of what the Oilers went through, having pretty much all the pieces they need and just have that weak spot in goaltending, like arguably it's the most important position on the ice. Most of the Stanley Cup winners that we've seen over the past years have been built on a strong goalie at least making a good run in the playoffs. It's surprising to me sometimes that there's not at least one or two great, the Gavin McKenna of goalies out there that you get snapped up in the first 5 to 10 picks. But you look back on the draft, and aside from a Carey Price and a few guys, it's these high goalie draft picks don't often hit. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It is weird, and I don't like perfect example. London Knights, Austin Elliott goes undrafted. I know he's a bit older, but then his backup gets drafted. I believe it was the second or third round, and the guy, I think he only played 20 games last year. So what did you see in those 20 games as opposed to Elliott, who wins 52 of 55 games, and this guy can't get a shot. Although I did read today that he's going to Dallas's development camp. Apparently the Leafs thing was not legit. So anyways, yeah, it seems it's almost like comparable to NFL quarterbacks, right? Like outside of the first round, you're basically just throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks with quarterbacks. I don't understand, because they all seem to be, 6'4", big dudes. I guess it's just movement. I don't know.
It seems to be like they mature or hit their prime at a different time than like, whereas like, a guy like Schaefer can probably step in year one and be an impactful player. But a lot of times you don't see young goalies just step in and kind of take over it. Often they're like guys that have been toiling in the minors for 5-6 years and finally get their chance, or, they seem to hit when they're, 25, 26 years old. Connor Hellebuck, I think, was a 5th-round draft pick.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously it's opportunity too, right? Like if you don't get a chance to play regularly, how are you going to improve? I mean, it's hard to work in a new goalie at the pro level, because you have such a small window to win things, you can't really risk it.
And you can't really ease the goal. Like, you get a new, you get a young centerman or something, you can put him on the 4th line, play him here or there. It's like with a goalie, you can break them mentally pretty quick and especially if they're getting drafted to a bad team with shitty defense. It's just, I think
that's probably it. Your confidence gets shattered if you're coming in on a shit team, right? Like, it's not like Bobrovsky was a machine when he first came into the league either, when he was with Columbus and that. And then you get in the right situation and you have a chance to flourish, I guess.
It's just interesting, given the importance of the position, how much of an afterthought it seems to be in the draft, and how the good goalies in the league seem to just come out of nowhere 8 years into their career, and all of a sudden they're Vezina candidates.
That's probably a good point too, is like your entry level and RFA years. If you're developing a goalie, by the time he probably gets comfortable, he can walk from whatever team he's on, right? If you're bringing them along that slowly. So that could have something to do with it too. It is a weird thing that they can't seem to get it right.
Yeah, you'd think that there'd at least be one or two sort of blue chipper, can't miss goalie prospects each year.
Yeah, it's odd that, like, you have so many professional goalie coaches and scouts. You'd think they would be able to pinpoint what. I know we've brought up Austin Elliott so many times, but just watching that guy play, like, he just seems so calm the whole time, and I think that's part of it. Like, as a guy who watches Stuart Skinner, who looks so fucking erratic all the time, and then you watch a guy like Elliott, where it's just he just seems more locked in. I don't know. I hope that guy gets a chance somewhere because I think he's good.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, those were some good highlights. And maybe it's time to now kind of shift gears to all the free agency stuff. So we've actually got a weekly hazing. There's gonna be a free agent frenzy version of that. So we'll jump into that.
Wave it off. Fuck, let's go. Fucking wave that stick at me again. You're gonna fucking eat it. Bare fucking teeth. You want to get knocked out again? We got a guy for you.
So for the weekly hazing, yeah, we're talking free agent frenzy. So many moves, Charlie. I remember when I was at the cabin the first couple days after the wedding, we had this Trevor Zegras trade. And I started making notes. Oh, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a big one to talk about. Here we are like a week and a half later, and that almost seems like a distant memory and kind of like way down on the list of things to talk about.
I actually forgot about it until you just brought that up.
Yeah, well, it was just funny because I was before we came on, I was going through some notes that I had written down. And I was like, oh yeah, Zegras got traded to the Flyers. But let's start with obviously the biggest free agent that was out there, and by far the most talked about, Mitch Marner off to Vegas, sign and trade for Nicholas Waugh. The core four is officially done. I'm kind of glad we can stop even using that word anymore and hearing the constant talk about it. But what are your thoughts on Marner going to Vegas?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, I guess you want to recoup anything, but why you're helping another team lock up a superstar for an extra year, right? Because after this year, the longest you can sign a guy is 7 years. And maybe that was something that Mitch was asking for. But why at that point, after he rejected a trade, that you're helping him out? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, kind
Nicholas
of a perfect
Waugh
landing, sending him to a perfect landing spot,
right?
basically.
And Nick Waugh is a fine player, I guess, and I guess you want to recoup something. I just thought it was weird that they kind of helped him out. For Vegas, watching them play Edmonton this year, they were definitely missing another offensive, wizard. And I kind of think the Leafs are going to regret this a little bit, right? Like 100-point guys, there was only 6 of them last year, and you just let one of them walk. I know that, the narrative's out there that he's not who you're going to win with, but how are you replacing 100 points?
Not only did you let him walk, you're basically shaming him out of town, throwing shit on his lawn, and just all the stuff that he took. It was time to part ways. We talked about that on a previous podcast. It was just like a toxic relationship that had run its course for whatever reason. But I think we haven't seen the best of Mitch Marner yet. I think he's going to thrive there in Vegas. He's not going to have the weight of the situation on him like he did in Toronto. He can just go out there and do his thing. Supported by those good playoff guys, I think when Vegas gets into the playoffs next year, we're going to see how good Marner can actually be in the playoffs.
And this is huge for Eichel, right? He's never had a running mate like this. So it sucks for me because they're, that's a team my team's got to go through. And they definitely improved. I still don't. I mean, they're losing Peter Angelo now. He could be done. Like his career might be over. So that's a big loss. But to add 100-point guy to an already good team is a huge move for them for sure.
I don't know if you saw the video of Mitch getting welcomed to Vegas, putting the jersey on. You're in Vegas. If you're going to do some sort of welcome thing, you're expecting something with a little sizzle to it. He's in an office surrounded by printers and cubicles and just a bunch of staff that looked like they kind of got forced into there to just stand up and cheer for him. It looked very awkward. There's like some cheerleaders there, but it's in an office setting. There's got a 3-hole punch in the background. Felt a little underwhelmed by that.
It was like Michael Scott orchestrated the welcome party. Like it was that weird, awkward, and you could tell even he didn't know what to do. And there wasn't even like a big cheer either. You could hear like the random applause.
It's like a bunch of staff that are thinking, I've got a bunch of work to do. Can we kind of get back to this? Or
Wrap this up.
Can we wrap this up? This is eating into my lunch break here. Anyways, so Marner's off to Vegas. We can finally put to rest all the trade rumors and talks, and I'm sure everything will get reignited when Vegas plays Toronto for the first time. So probably the story's not completely done, but let's shift gears. Our two-time defending Stanley Cup champs are bringing the band back. Pretty impressive moves from Bill Zito to lock up Ekblad, Marchand, and Bennett, all taking pretty good little hometown discounts. Looks like they're going to be the team to beat again next year.
And then they let Nate Schmidt walk, and then they bring in Jeff Petrie at league minimum. Like, it's just another one of these, veteran defensemen for nothing who just wants to take a shot at winning. And yeah, they're obviously going to be the team to beat again. And that's where I think a team like Toronto, like, you just let 100-point guy go. How are you going to go up against this guy? And then even yesterday, Nick Ehlers goes to Carolina. What does that do against a team like Florida? It's another undersized forward, right? And they already have so many of them, and you just got wiped off the ice by Florida. They're so loaded, and I just can't see. I mean, they might lose Rodriguez, I guess, because of a cap crunch, but they're definitely going to be the team to beat again. It's just such a juggernaut, and they're all locked up for like 4 or 5 more years.
Their window for the next 3 years is probably going to be the team to beat.
There's nobody better, and I think Bobrovsky's done after next year. But if you're him, where else are you going to want to play, right? Like, take a discount and just win more.
Really, is the NHL's kind of starting to remind me a little bit of the NBA dynamic, whereas the players start to get these no trade clauses and more control over where they go. Yeah. You're starting to see the markets with the no state tax, with like desirable weather, with just that are great cities to live in, attract guys like Marner, and have all those guys in Florida re-signing and making it like way harder for a team like Winnipeg to sign Ehlers. Like, even like my Wings, it's not an easy time to attract high-end talent to Detroit compared to, places like Anaheim and Vegas and Florida.
Yeah, they can say it's not an advantage, but it's definitely got something to do with it, right?
Yeah. So let's switch to our other Cup finalist, your Oilers. They were pretty busy in the off season since losing to Florida. In your opinion, is the roster better, worse, or about the same as the one they just finished the Cup with?
I wouldn't say it's better. I think it's kind of a lateral move, and you're up against such a cap crunch, and you got to sign McDavid, and you're kind of limited at what you can do. And I think they're kind of putting too much stock in this. Like, they have this Matthew Savoy who's supposed to come up. Now, he did really play well in the AHL last year, but to expect somebody to make a jump like that, to go to, like, they're talking top 6, and I can't see that happening. I do like Trent Frederick. I think, he fills the Evander Kane role, but how you haven't done anything with the goaltending, and maybe there's nothing out there, but then when I see Detroit grab John Gibson for a pretty reasonable return, the guy's got an injury history, but if he can even play 50 games for Detroit, like, that's huge to get a legit number one.
Yeah, that's what everybody's saying is, it's great Detroit got that because they've been a little inconsistent in the goaltending department. So that's at least a moderate step forward from last year, but everybody kind of surprised that Edmonton wasn't in the mix there to try to get a guy like that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like something else is going to happen here, like maybe in the trade market, but as of right now, I can't say I would put them in the top 3 right now, but who knows? Maybe Savoy. And then I've also heard that they're working with Tampa to get Isaac Howard, who's a Hobey Baker winner a couple years ago, doesn't want to play in Tampa. I mean, that would literally be like adding a first-round pick to your bottom 6. So we'll see from that. But I'm not super confident right now with what they've done.
What's the story with that Isaac Howard? Because I did hear he didn't want to play in Tampa, and that was puzzling to me given, pretty nice weather. You got the no state taxes. You've got a pretty consistently good franchise there with a strong head coach.
I think it's just opportunity. I don't think he's going to get the chance because they are pretty loaded at the forward position. And I don't know if he's at odds with the management there or what, but it does seem weird that you wouldn't want to play with that team. But if he ends up at Edmonton, I'll take him.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think he's going to be back at Michigan State this year, right?
Yeah. Unless he gets traded, he would probably make Edmonton right now because they're so thin.
Well, that'll be interesting to follow. And just kind of a side note, talking about Tampa Bay, that's the one team when we think about who could potentially give Florida a run. Like I know they didn't do much this playoffs, but just in terms of the pedigree, the playoff type players they got there, and maybe they just didn't have their best playoff series this year, but that's the one team I could see that Florida rivalry potentially giving them a bit of a challenge.
I'm going to make an early 25 prediction that the New York Rangers are going to give Florida a run next year. I just think with a better coach and an already decent, they got a great team already. And, you lost Shesterkin for quite a bit of last season. I just think the coaching change there is going to transform that team. That's early.
I like it, Charlie. Coming in with a hot take 4 or 5 months before the season started. But I did like that Gavrikov move. One of the best defensive defensemen in the league. Played great in the playoffs this year against Edmonton. You pair him up with Fox and Norris, a Norris candidate defenseman. That could be, one of the best 2 or 3 defense pairings in the league going into next year. And I agree. I think when you got that much talent, bringing in an experienced coach like Sullivan, the ship can get turned around pretty quick when you get the right guy in there as a head coach.
I agree.
What other moves stood out for you? I mean, we don't have time to kind of cover everything, but is there any other moves, trades that you think are going to be particularly impactful?
I like the Leafs getting that Matthias Maselli. I know a lot of people probably don't know much about him, but he put up almost 60 points playing with the Coyotes 2 years ago, and he put up 47 this year. And it's not like he's playing with a super talented roster in those seasons. So, maybe a second line role and some power play stuff with the Leafs. Guy could be a 60-point guy again for sure. One of the weirdest ones was Vancouver signing Demko for $8.5 million when you got that Shelovs and Lankinen as pretty legit NHL goalies. Why? I thought there was a chance for them to move him out and bring something back. I thought that was an odd one.
It seems like they're trying to shore up as much as they can to put a decent team out for next year in hopes of keeping Quinn Hughes there, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
No.
I think he's looking to go south of the border and pair up with his brothers there, but we'll see.
One other bizarre one was Philly signing Christian Dvorak for almost $6 million. Who are you bidding against for that? I thought that one was bizarre. I know they have to get to cap floors and stuff like that, but that one was a weird one.
And you talked about the Leafs, just not a trade, but just locking up Nyes at a pretty solid AAV. He's turning into my favorite Toronto player pretty quick, and the type of guy they need moving forward. So that's going to be a great contract for them.
Absolute steal. And in 3 years, when the cap goes way up, it's going to be like paying that guy $4.5 million. Just whoever negotiated that one, they get a gold star there.
Well, let's put a bow on the weekly hazing here. There's a lot of other moves we could talk about, and we can kind of follow things as the off season evolves. But I think those are some of the highlights and more fascinating ones to discuss. So let's jump into our report card for the week.
I've been reviewing your work. Quite frankly, it stinks. These reports you handed in, it's almost as if you have no business training at all.
All right, I got an F for LA Kings GM Ken Holland. He comes into the offseason with, I believe, the third most cap space. I could be wrong there, but it was a lot. And his first three moves are Corey Perry for $3.5 million, Cody Ceci $4.5 million, and Brian Dumoulin. I looked at this Kings team as being like one or two guys away from being a legit contender, and these three guys were nowhere on my radar. Like, I think, if anything, that team, and he gave away Jordan Spence to Ottawa, who's a decent defenseman who's only 24. And I just think that team took a massive step backwards. So an F for Ken Holland.
I'm giving an A+ to the life and career of Alex Delvecchio. Played 24 seasons with the Red Wings, his whole career there, 12 of them as captain. Won 3 cups in the 50s as a center on the famed production line with Gordie Howe and terrible Ted Lindsay. He was the third player to score 1,000 points, but just an absolute Red Wings legend. He's, been part of the organization even in coaching and in the front office pretty much his whole career, even after he finished playing. A class act on and off the ice. So A+ to Alex Delvecchio.
All right, I got a D for the Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I don't hate the contest on its own, but I'm just not sure this is something that needs to be televised. And it was on ESPN, and Joey Chestnut putting away 70 and a half hot dogs in 10 minutes. I'm not sure it's compelling television, and I think it's actually pretty gross. Like, I don't mind a hot dog. 70 of them seems a bit excessive. So I don't get it. It's not for me, I guess. But D for the hot dog eating contest.
I'm going with a C for the TSN free agent frenzy coverage. It almost feels like I'm watching a Saturday Night Live parody of free agent coverage, because there's a desk with James Dutchy and there's like 5 guys on there. And then you actually see 2 other desks in the background that have, one has like 4 people at it, one has 3, and they basically have every person on the TSN payroll providing some sort of breakdown and analysis on the free agency. I just feel like it's a little overkill, a little bit much, but at the same time, I appreciate that it is a good source to kind of get your updates quickly. That's why I'm not giving it an F. I'm giving it a C.
All right, I'm giving a C- to barbershops. So right before the wedding, I obviously got my haircut, and I don't understand this like ultra tough aesthetic in these new modern barbershops. Like, everyone's head to toe in tattoos and neck tattoos and face tattoos, and they got the metal music just blasting. And I'm like, we're cutting hair here. We're not running an fucking underground MMA promotion. I think we can scale it back on the tough guy act. So C- for barbershops.
Nice. I've got an A+ for the Top Gun soundtrack. I just rewatched Top Gun Maverick last night. I hadn't seen it since it was in the theater. And when that guitar riff comes on, I'm ready to run through a brick wall. It was awesome in the 80s. It holds up now in the sequel. Great movie. Even the cheesy parts are kind of fun to watch there. But Top Gun Maverick, such a good movie with those action scenes with the jets. And the soundtrack just tops it all off and gets you fired right up. So A+ for the Top Gun soundtrack.
All right, I got an A+ for Seattle Mariners catcher Cal Raleigh. He just tied Ken Griffey Jr. for the most home runs before the All-Star break with 35. He's on pace to smash the record for a catcher, but the best part of it is Cal Raleigh's nickname, Big Dumper. So I hope he keeps hammering it. It's not too often you get a catcher who's putting up insane numbers, so Cal Raleigh, A+ for the Big Dumper.
Nice. I'm going to finish it off with a C for NHL draft grades. I like discussing the drafts and trying to see who kind of what moves are going to make the most impact. But trying to apply a draft grade and make this bold statement about how each team did, it's kind of pointless because you never really actually know until 5 years down the road. And nobody's coming out this year and going back to the 2020 draft to see what Pierre LeBrun had to say about it. So let's just chill it with the draft grades and enjoy talking about the prospects.
I like it. All right, my last one. I got an A+ for the Brantford Bulldogs, who drafted a 17-year-old kid named Alex Karmanov. He's out of Moldova, 7 feet tall, 273 pounds. In 35 games, he had 33 points. He's a Penn State commit, but I'm definitely going to make it to Brantford to go and watch this absolute unit play a game of hockey. Like 7 feet. So that's before he's on skates. Like apparently he's a decent skater too. So I got to get there this year because I want to see this guy play. So A+ to the Bulldogs.
Well, that sounds cool. It could be like the Wemby of hockey here. Nice. Well, that wraps up the report card. Let's hit our outro here and wrap things up for the week. A couple things I wanted to get your opinion on, Charlie. You touched on that hot dog eating contest. Jimmy Chestnut, I think he won his Joey Chestnut. Sorry. Yeah, Joey Chestnut. He ate 70.5 hot dogs in 10 minutes. Now, It's a nice day out there. You could get the grill going here, get a few dogs on there. How many do you think you could eat in 10 minutes?
I don't even think I could do 10. Like, I like a hot dog. Maybe, I think the most I've had this year would be 3. But I don't know. I can't see myself making double digits. How about you?
Yeah, I thought maybe if they were Red Hots, you could get 7 or 8 down in 10 minutes. Obviously, it wouldn't be pleasant. You'd just be stuffing yourself. But, if there was $100,000 or something on the line, I could probably force 7 or 8 of them down. But I don't know how it's humanly possible to get 70 of them in your stomach.
How shitty does that guy feel, like, even an hour later? You must just throw up, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that, but it's funny because I was reading about it, and there's actually like a Major League Eating Association that puts on these events, which I thought was stupid. And apparently Joey had there was a holdout with his contract. He was throwing his weight around as a defending champ, but
hot dog union.
Pretty serious business. But
there was before the hot dog contest, they had, I think it was lemonade drinking, and they got like these giant fucking jugs, and it looked even stupider than the hot dog eating contest. And I'm just like, this is what's on TV.
Yeah. Well, other summer activities, Blue Jays on quite a heater now. And, what looked like a runaway for me on our little side bet between the Jays and the Tigers. Jays have closed that gap. I better not send you my my shirt selection just yet.
I think you had a 14-game lead at one point, and now I believe it's down to 5.
I think so. Yeah.
Things are getting tight.
Yes.
I got one interesting thing for you. I just read before we came on here, the Leafs have to win a cup before 2030-31 because that's when the next band comes off the Stanley Cup, and the Leafs will no longer be on the Stanley Cup if they don't win before 30-31.
Oh, that would rub a little salt in the wound. As if there wasn't enough pressure on them already. Well, before we sign off for the day, Charlie, we wanted to just do a little tip of the cap to a couple of hockey legends that are retiring. Don Cherry, age 91, just did his last podcast last week. Kind of a nostalgic one for guys our age. He got fired in his last coaching job in 1980. Then worked as an analyst with CBC for a couple years before doing Hockey Night in Canada. 1982 is when that started with Dave Hodge at the time. And then in 1986, switched to Ron McLean as the co-host and kind of became the version of Hockey Night in Canada that we all remember. But, from my perspective, I look back on it and think from the time I can actually remember watching hockey up until 5 years ago, so basically until I was 40 years old, there wasn't a Saturday night I can remember where Don Cherry wasn't on there at the intermission. And even though some of his takes haven't aged the best, it was always one of my favorite things to watch. Sometimes more than the game, if you were at a party, sometimes you'd have the TV on mute during the game with music on in the background, and then Coach's Corner would come on. You'd actually stop the music and turn the volume on to listen to what Don had to say.
Yeah, like you'd hear that Coach's Corner theme song come on and you knew you had, 15 seconds because they'd always take a quick commercial and then come back to go and, grab a beer or go to the bathroom. I you're right, his ideas maybe don't translate to 2025, but I could give two shits about the intermission now, but I always made a point to watch because you never, I love the back and forth between him and McLean because he wouldn't put up with Ron McLean's bullshit and his stupid punny outros. Like you could see the disgust on his face. And I don't like how Ron McLean kind of railroaded him at the end and ran him out. Like if you say a bunch of shit about the PWHL and we get kicked off the internet, I'm shutting her down because I
We're
can't
going
do
Thelma
this.
and Louise style
Yeah,
on
that's
that
right.
one. Yeah.
I can't do this without you. But no, the guy was just as important to the broadcast as the games were. I thought it sucks to see it go out like this. We talked about that last podcast, like it was pretty rough listen. Obviously, he's 91, so he doesn't have the wit that he did. But do you think he ends up in the Hall of Fame?
I think so, yeah. I think a little time passes, he'll get in there, and his contributions will outshine sort of any of his maybe less sensitive comments to certain types of players. But I just think what I miss the most is just having one guy with a dynamic personality sort of leading
Yeah.
that, or that sort of 1-2 punch with him and McLean, versus now it's just so watered down with so many people on that broadcast. Nobody really saying anything that compelling. Like, love him or hate him, he was interesting. He was saying something that you either agreed with or disagreed with, and it was fun. It was entertaining. And I mean, I think when he left Coach's Corner or got fired, it probably was time for him to go. Even as a fan of Don Cherry, there's most of the stuff he was saying at that point where you're kind of like, I don't know, Don.
But even on that last podcast, right? Like he still nailed it. He's like, Florida dumps it in the right way and the opposite winger goes hard and there's nothing you can do. Like he still his ideas are still legit in 2025. It's just maybe some of the other stuff
Yeah,
isn't.
I like that he would just simplify it. As soon as it went to Coach's Corner, he'd have his 3 points that he was ready to hammer on, and things that he would hammer on consistently over time. Yeah, just in terms of hockey analysis and breakdown, there hasn't been anybody to fill that void yet.
And in like 1988 or 1989, I can't remember what year, but what kid didn't get Rock'em Sock'em Hockey as a Christmas gift?
Absolutely. I think I probably watched that VHS 1,000 times. All the quotes. I still remember the Savardi and Spinorama and all the different highlights that were in there. So tip of the cap to Grapes for a run, almost a 40-year run on Coach's Corner. Pretty unprecedented, and probably something we'll never see again in terms of that sort of impact on broadcasting.
Sure.
Speaking of impact on broadcasting and kind of doing it in a different way, another guy I really appreciated, Bob McKenzie. He's retiring. Just a little background on him that I was looking at. He started his career at the Hockey News magazine, which I remember reading that back in the day. He was actually the youngest editor-in-chief there when he got that position. And then built up so many contacts that he kind of invented the role of hockey insider. Everybody's out there now doing it. It was kind of a new thing when he came onto the scene. I kind of remember like, he's not doing your analysis and game breakdown, but he's kind of giving you what that sort of Elliot Friedman is type of thing is doing now. So again, in he started 86 with TSN, so pretty similar career trajectory in terms of how long we've been used to seeing him on the screens or on TV, similar to Don Cherry. But what's your take on Bob McKenzie as he wraps up his career?
Yeah, you kind of said it there. Like he was the one guy, and it's kind of Friedman now, but those are the guys that you'd put the trust in, right? If this guy is saying it, then he obviously knows what's happening. And there's so many of these, like social media, like anybody puts out a thing, I'm hearing this to this, and you're like, well, you're not really hearing anything, you're just printing shit. But when Bob McKenzie would say something, you kind of took it as fact, like this is happening. And I loved his stuff with the World Juniors, right? Like he was a staple for that too, and he will be missed. Have you had
Yeah.
his margaritas?
No,
Oh,
what's
I
this
don't know
all
if they.
about?
Well, he had a like an actual in the LCBO, the Bobberitas, and it had
Oh,
his face on them. And I'm not sure if they're still for sale, but they're pretty good.
interesting. Yeah,
Oh, man.
I didn't realize that. But yeah, I felt the same. All my nostalgia with the World Juniors is you can picture him there breaking it all down and filling you in on who these prospects were. And in the world of so many hot takes and sensationalism, he could just give you some information as
Yeah.
like a regular person. He wouldn't try to like over dramatize it or anything. He would just sort of give you the facts. He wasn't trying to, get clicks, get views, get ratings. And it's just not a lot of guys out there like that anymore.
No, yeah, totally agree.
So congrats on retirement to two hockey legends. Yeah, so we went a little longer today, Charlie, but I think that's okay. There was so much to catch up on, away for a few weeks. Cool breaking down the draft, wrapping up the regular season, free agent frenzy, and everything else. So we'll wrap it up now. We'll talk to everybody for the next episode, probably same time next week. We're just working out the summer schedule and figuring out how we're gonna do that. Probably a few classic episodes peppered in here, but we'll be continuing to roll through the summer and having some fun with all the off-season action.
Yeah, I'm gonna see how many hot dogs I can eat today watching the Jays game, and we'll look forward to next week.
Sounds good, buddy. We'll talk to you then.